Good evening, everybody. Can you hear okay? And Seichin, look at the screen a sec. Casey and Justin, can you guys hear okay? Maybe give a thumbs up emoji or something or other. Otherwise, we'll assume you're fine. I guess if you can't hear at all, you wouldn't know that I was asking. But that's right. Good job. Yeah, we're doing it. Well, just thinking, it's just so nice to be together. And I know every one of us probably has our own reasons for being here. And probably for each of us, some of those reasons are known. Some of those reasons are maybe not so clear. So, great, we're here. And we can see what we can learn in our hearts, from these words I'm going to share, from our experiences doing this meditation and doing the chanting and bowing. But I think, none of us would be here if we didn't need to be. So it's good that we're getting what we need tonight, don't you think? I think that's really, really great. And if it turns out this isn't your thing, that's fine. You're not stuck here. So we did a little chanting just now, leaning into what Zen usually leans into, which are the texts and teachings on wisdom, on clear seeing, on deep understanding. And we also have in our chant book a few texts that are more oriented towards compassion and love. So you have another chant in you? Let's do one more chant while we sit here. Let's chant the one called Metta Sutta on page 13, I think it is. I'll introduce the title and then we can chant together. Because I want to speak a little more about this. We talked about it last week. Not all of us were here. Metta Sutta. This is what should be accomplished by the one who is wise, who seeks the good and has obtained peace. Let one be strenuous, upright, and sincere, without pride, easily contented and joyous. Let one not be submerged by the things of the world. Let not take upon oneself the burden of riches. Let one's senses be controlled. Let one be wise but not puffed up, and let one not desire great possessions even for one's family. Let one do nothing that is mean or that the wise would reprove. May all be happy, may they be joyous and live in safety. All living beings, whether weak or strong, in high or middle or low realms of existence, small or great, visible or invisible, near or far, or born or to be born, may all beings be happy. Let no one deceive another, nor despise any being in any state. Let none by anger or hatred wish harm to another, even as a mother at the risk of her life watches over and protects her only child. So with a boundless mind should one cherish all living things, diffusing love over the entire world, above, below, and all around without limit. So let one cultivate an infinite goodwill toward the whole world, standing or walking, sitting or lying down, during all one's waking hours. Let practice the way with gratitude, not holding to fixed views, endowed with insight, freed from sense appetites. One who achieves the way will be freed from the duality of birth and death. Thank you. Do you agree? Would this be a good way to live? So this word, it's here, the word here, metta, is in the Pali language, which is like the language that the early Buddhist teachings were recorded in. There's a slightly different version of this in the Sanskrit, which was a little bit later, which is Maitri. What's interesting about this word to me is there actually isn't a direct translation of it. We don't really have an English word that exactly means what they meant by this word. And there's several things like that in Buddhism, where there's not exactly a word for it in the language that we're speaking here at the moment anyway. I don't know if all of you are native speakers of English. Most of us are, I bet. So that interests me, because the ways that we perceive and understand the world are really kind of governed by language, right? It was explained to us in words. We thought about it to some extent in words. We talk about it in words. And we know there's more to life and this universe than just what we can talk about and describe. But that's the stuff that's easier for us to see and understand, don't you think? The things that we have words for. The things we don't have words for are a little trickier. We have similar words, but not exactly this word. So it gets translated usually into a compound, loving-kindness. Loving kindness. So not exactly just love and not exactly just kindness, somehow a coming together of love and kindness. A deep, deep, unconditional wish for the wellness of all, including ourselves. We're also pretty good at leaving ourselves out, right? Which there's a famous story about the Dalai Lama. Maybe you've heard this story. As you know, as a young man, even growing up in a feudal Buddhist society in Tibet, he was interested in science. And explorers and stuff had actually given him some gadgets. He had like a wind-up toy car he took apart as a boy. Maybe it was the only wind-up toy car in all of Tibet at the time, maybe. And once circumstances, like the Chinese invasion, forced him out of China, he could really explore his interest in science more. And he got really curious about, well, what the Westerners are also trying to figure out how the mind works with their science. And we Buddhists have been trying to understand the mind through our practices and teachings for thousands of years. So I wonder where they line up, or where they don't line up, and how the science tradition and the Buddhist tradition could inform each other and help each other. And so pretty open-minded, really, person. And, maybe all the more so because of what happened to his country. So anyway, that was the backstory. The actual story was at one of these meetings where the psychologists and the Buddhists were talking to each other. One of the psychologists said, well, what kind of meditations and practices do you have for self-hatred? And the Dalai Lama listened to the translation. He has a little English and had a little less then probably. And he asked the question of his translator, and his translator whispered back, and he asked another question of the translator. And eventually the translator said, His Holiness is very confused. We don't have this. What does this mean? Self-hatred. So, I don't know if it's 1,000% true. Every culture has some issues, but isn't that interesting, though? We kind of take it for granted in some way that we're hard on ourselves, right? Maybe we don't always notice quite how hard we are on ourselves because we're sort of habituated to that inner voice that's naggy or negative or judgmental. So that's an important thing to realize about this practice that this little text is trying to describe to us. It's also about having this intense, unconditional, positive, loving, kind resolve towards our own selves. So not just may all beings be happy, but may I be happy. Let's look at that second kind of full paragraph. The text is a little bit not exactly tidy in paragraphs, but this part where it starts with may all beings be happy. What if we put I in there? Why don't you read that with me, substituting I for beings. Let's see how that feels. May I be happy. May I be joyous and live in safety. may all of me, may all of me, whether weak or strong, in high or middle or low realms of existence, small or great, all visible or invisible, near or far, born or to be born, may all of me be happy. May I be happy. Maybe we can read that many kinds of beings for all the aspects of ourselves, you know. And that's true, isn't it, you know? We have parts of us that have been born and not yet born. We have high and low and middle parts, I guess, you know. And we'd absolutely have parts of us that are hidden, right? That are invisible. That maybe we ourselves don't even know that they're there yet. So all of our potential, may all of us in every way, past, present, and future, be happy or joyful. We talked a little bit about that word happy last week, and so I know some people find happy a little kind of light, you know, a little light duty. I started singing a little happy song. I won't do it again this time. But actually that's a translation of a word that has a different valence than the word happy. The word that sounds kind of like sukha. If you know Buddhism and you know about dukkha, this is the opposite of dukkha. The opposite of suffering is sukha. So it's a kind of a grounded happiness, you know. There's another word for yippity-doo-dah happiness, a different word. So it's a kind of so maybe joyful, maybe contented. And we're going to do a little practice in a minute, and you can, you know, it's a, you know, since words so strongly govern our reality, and maybe meditation eventually we soften up a little bit and we're like, whatever, it's just a word, who knows what's going on. But if the words that I suggest to you in this little meditation aren't quite the right words, you can over time choose your own words that really resonate for you. So maybe it's may all beings be deeply contented, or may all beings know that they are loved. That sounds good, huh? That sounds good. So we looked a lot at the first half of the text last week, and I was particularly interested to kind of underline for myself in the second sentence there the kind of quality of effort that this text suggests. It suggests that we be strenuous, upright, and sincere, without pride, easily contented and joyous. Like that's kind of like our mode. In order to do this, we want to be that way. And it seems a little contrasty. We don't associate strenuousness necessarily with joy and contentment, you know. So Buddhism and meditation in general, I think, encourages us to make some new linkages and some new pathways that we can be seriously happy, you know, strenuously content. And it's also interesting to notice the qualities of effort that we use in our lives and then see if we can play with that in meditation and in everything we do. We have some kind of default ways that we kind of effort, right? Maybe not always that aware of how we're approaching tasks, like the task of being a person, for instance. So I was actually thinking about this when I was running. Was it this morning? Yeah, it was this morning. So I'm not like a super serious runner, but I've been semi-regular for a couple of years, partly because I had a running buddy for a while. That helped a lot. I usually run 3 miles pretty much every time, and usually pretty slowly. And recently I got a watch that has the fitness stuff on it. And if I tell it that I'm going on a run, it actually talks to me. First I thought, well, that's the worst thing in the world. Why do I have a talking watch? How do I turn it off? But then I used it and I kind of appreciated it. Because after I've run each mile that I've run, it says to me, you have run 1 mile. The pace of this mile was, and then it tells me how many minutes and seconds it took me to run that mile. And so I don't have to look at it. I can actually just hear it. It's not too loud. Other people don't hear it, I think. So I actually got kind of curious, like, what would be required? Is it well, first I get curious, yes or no. I wondered, is it possible for me to be a faster runner? Or is this kind of how I am? I run this fast, which is not very fast. And so I started experimenting, and I realized my watch would give me feedback, you know. You have run 2 miles. The pace of this last mile was... She's very friendly. She also kind of randomly sometimes tells me what condition I'm in, which I don't know how she gets that information. This morning, one time she said, your condition is good. Then later she said, your condition is fatigued. And I felt exactly the same, but that's another whole other thing. But this time thing has really been interesting. So at first I thought, well, just kind of crank harder, like push harder. And I could definitely run a bit faster if I pushed harder, but not that much faster, just a bit. And then somehow it occurred to me, like maybe I could both bring more effort and relax while I'm running. I just don't know why. I kind of was playing around, in my body and trying things and be more upright and more open. I tend to be a huncher, like, no, be more upright, be more open. And then I thought, oh, just take longer strides, not necessarily harder strides, longer strides. And then, to my great surprise, I ran a mile in 9 minutes and 33 seconds or something like that. And then I thought, well, maybe that's kind of what they're talking about in this sutra. Strenuous, I'm putting in energy, upright, yeah, open, but also relaxed, Yeah, without pride. I mean, we're talking a 9-minute mile here, right? I think the world record is now down to 3 or something like crazy like that. I'm 60 years old and everything, but still. So I just want to suggest this experiment and whatever the things are that you do. Well, what kind of effort am I bringing? And are there ways I can bring strenuousness, seriousness, intentionality, and also be relaxed and open and upright? Yeah, and sincere, I'm never going to be an Olympic runner, but I'm trying to be sincere about taking care of my body, and I get to be around people who are very, very sincere about taking care of their bodies, and I've mostly been lazy about this, more or less. I've been active, but not very strenuous or determined to take care of my body. So anyway, small aside about maybe that's what they mean. But actually, and then especially meditation, right? Since we're sitting here for half an hour at a time, you might notice, like, what would it be to be intentional and bring some energy, but also relaxed? One way that might work in the body, here, try something right now, is to kind of replant yourself so you're a little more on the front of your pelvis, if you're kind of squishing under your tail. And maybe the strenuous has a feeling of like the spine is long, the chest is open, the breath is big, you're like here. And maybe that's especially kind of an inhale thing, like inhaling, extending, opening, and then exhale, relaxed. Exhaling, letting the body hang from the skeleton, letting the face soften, letting the shoulders drop. So I don't know, that's just a physicality kind of angle on this with meditation, but yeah, see how it is for you. Because the Buddhist teachings here are telling us that the approach really matters. So I figured this text starts with that for a reason, It's not just right away saying, okay, mindful, loving kindness, okay, practice this way. And it doesn't jump right to, may all beings be happy, right? It talks about the conditions to cultivate where that's more possible for us to really feel. We know that the very first Buddhists were interested in this and practiced this. It wasn't just about being peaceful and kind of drifting off into nirvana once you're free from all karmic entanglements. And there was particularly a list that was repeated very often of 4 different interrelated qualities, and this was the first one on a list of 4. Buddhism has many lists. The other 3, just so you may know these, are compassion, which is similar but a little different spin, more to do with relating to suffering, is compassion. The third one is another one with no word in English. Sympathetic joy usually gets translated at. It means really being happy when that other people are getting what they need. Like we say as a social convention, oh, I'm so happy for you. Sometimes we mean it, sometimes not so much, right? So really to mean it. And the fourth quality of these 4 interrelated qualities is equanimity. So there's that balance, that relaxedness, that steadiness. So the 4 again are loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. These are seen as just really great qualities. But we don't know if the meditation I'm about to share with you was done really early on or not. It shows up in commentaries a few centuries later, so it may have been something that they kind of figured out over time. Because while it really does help us to say these things over and over and over to ourselves, may all beings be happy. You could chant this every day for the rest of your life, wouldn't hurt you. But we need to do more than just say it, right? We need to find some way of really bringing it in, really practicing with it, really kind of bringing it forth. And so the basic meditations we do here are really more about settling and grounding with some curiosity, like what is happening? Wow, here I am. But there are also a whole suite of practices that are about, I like the word cultivating, like in the garden. Sort of planting seeds or nurturing the seeds that are already there. And the idea is that everyone has these good qualities. Everyone is loving, everyone is kind, everyone is compassionate, and everyone ended up with plenty of the opposite of these too, right? Everyone is also cruel, confused, hurtful, right? That's how it is with conditioned beings. And so the cultivation practices, which we'll try one in just a second, are about just kind of recognizing these qualities that are already within us and really inviting them forth and creating, and the other thing I like about cultivation and gardening as a metaphor here is we tend to think about how do I fix this and make it happen. And we know that if you took a seed and you put it in the ground and you're like, I want it to grow faster, so you got a couple of tweezers and pulled it apart, it would not work out, right? But we tend to do that to ourselves, right? So instead, you just put the seed in, right? But you do create good conditions, right? You need water and sunlight and all this, good soil, microbiota. So this is the idea with these compassion practices, trying to create good conditions. So it's both in the overall approach that's described at the beginning of the text, but also in the meditation itself. So here's the loving kindness meditation. It makes use of existing relationships we have, which can help us sort of feel into our innate loving kindness. It's easy to feel warm and loving when you think about somebody you love, usually. This practice also makes use of visualization and imagination. So I'm going to invite you to visualize such a person and other people in your life, really imagine them. And in your body, heart, and mind, you really do feel something very similar to when you really are with a person. Imagination is powerful. It gets a bad rap sometimes in our society. Oh, you just made that up. Well, that's great. Powerful to make things up. And it makes a little use of language, which I already mentioned. So if the language I suggest isn't quite it, don't worry too much. Just practice with it or change it a little. Okay? So let's try like 10 minutes or so of loving kindness meditation, maybe 15. We've already been sitting for a minute, so if you want to recross your legs or have a little stretch or change your position some way, or remember you have a body by feeling your body. Yeah. Whew. Sometimes I feel it would be a significantly more peaceful world if we just stretched more, don't you think? That would probably be true. Oh, yeah. And I'm not very good at remembering to stretch myself. And we tend to do eyes open meditations. Maybe for this, eyes closed is a little more freeing. Either way is fine. And all these more elaborate meditations are built on the foundation of the steadiness that we cultivate in our zazen, in our basic awareness practices. So tuning back into that feeling of steadiness, stability, which we feel physically, mentally, emotionally. Never perfect steadiness, but a steadiness, yeah. And then I want to invite you to bring to mind a person whom you're in a warm, loving relationship with. It need not be a perfect relationship, because there aren't any. Someone kind of in that category, a close friend. Could be a romantic partner, a child, a pet. Someone you really feel some warmth for and with. It's helpful if you invite a particular person, so see who comes to mind. Just give yourself space. And as they come to mind, please visualize them. Imagine that they're right here, sitting right next to you or right in front of you. What do they look like? What does it feel like to be in their presence? Is there a feeling or an echo in your body itself with the imagined presence of this other whom you care for? And it may be pretty natural to really appreciate this person and really wish for the best for them. For a smile to come to your lips. And then let's use language as a kind of a focusing tool, a kind of way of sort of sending energy, directing energy. And say to yourself, imagining this as a gift for this person, this other being, may you be well. May you be well, or may you be happy, either way. May you be joyful. Maybe pick one of those and just gently repeat it, maybe with the breath, and feel into what that offering is like for you, and maybe even imagine how it might be received. May you be, what's the right word? Deep expression of care and love. And like any practice, that kind of gently bringing yourself back, strenuous, right? And relaxed. Bring in some energy. And then let's imagine the person's still here, but let's imagine a little pivot. It's a little more like you're side by side. And the sense of we is here. May we be well. May we be joyful. May we have what we need. See how your mind wants to finish the sentence. May we be. Can we really mean it? And then as you feel ready, let's allow this other to kind of drift away a little bit. Maybe they're looking on. Maybe they've just going about their business. And bring the attention more fully to yourself. Really feel the feeling of being here right now, in this body, with this mind, this heart. And can you give yourself full permission now to wish yourself well? We were practicing a little bit before. Let's go deeper. May I be well. May I be joyful. May I be content. May I be happy. What would you wish yourself? And can you really mean it? Really give this to yourself and really receive it from yourself. And even if you don't feel like you totally mean it, that's okay. Just practice anyway. We don't always follow the breath quite all the time, right? When we're trying to do that. So it's a practice. May I be well as much as I will allow myself, or something. Or maybe add a little bit of immediacy. Sometimes we give ourselves permission to be happy later, you know. So you might wish for yourself, may I be happy now, today. Not like after such and so, but now. May I be joyful now. And let's release the efforting and the words. Just let them drift away. And let's just come back to that sense of steadiness, but with a lot of curiosity. How is it now? Not that we need to make a list of any things, but feeling the feeling, sitting with the feeling, whatever it is right now. And when I, so-called end the meditation in a minute, maybe you can stay in touch with whatever this is in some quiet way. Remembering that it's right there in your own heart all the time. Thank you. So can release the meditation. I'm super curious if anyone is willing to share a few words about your experience with that little meditation. What did you notice? And so the Zoomers know what you said. I'll probably just repeat it rather than getting the other microphone going. So what happened? What did you experience? It can be a very brief report. You don't have to have like a dissertation about loving kindness. Was it challenging? Was it interesting? Was it surprising? What did you feel? What did you notice? If you found it boring, that's totally legit. Oh yeah? Hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Oh, very interesting. And is it Chris? No, Chris, okay. Just for the Zoomers, or if you couldn't quite hear him in the room, Chris was saying something like, correct me if I, that he's able to feel sort of somatically where the joy is, how it can move, and and the ways that it may be blocked, and that there's some choice here around kind of pushing through or allowing healing or something like that. Is that more or less? Wait, okay. Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. Could feel that. Yeah. Yeah. Other noticings? Mm. Mm-hmm. So they're both there. Mm. Well, I think that's okay. Uh-huh. Reza was saying the direction to just pick one person is not viable because she has to have both her kids there, and that switching the focus to self-loving kindness was led to a feeling of softening. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate this emphasis so far, and Chris and Reza both sharing that. Yeah, there's something here about a feeling. We can be so cerebral. Like, oh, am I getting this? Does this make sense? Have I reached level 3? No, I'm terrible at this. And yeah, maybe it's good to get out of that whole debate. Get out of our heads a little bit and just and more in the feeling. Anyone else want to share a word or two? Mm-hmm. Oh. Oh. Mm-hmm. 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 Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. All of a sudden, yeah, all of a sudden, yeah. Jason was saying that, yeah, it felt good and smooth and organic to have a loved one and a we with a loved one, but then going to the eyes like, and kind of experimenting. I appreciate the way you're describing experimenting. Well, maybe instead of I can just address myself from a little bit of distance, give myself a little bit of space internally like that. Refer to myself by name. Excuse me, just a little foot cramp. It doesn't usually happen to me. So anyway, like all these meditations, it's a worthwhile thing to do them over and over and over again. So, and we don't emphasize this particular area of meditation as much in Zen, but Yeah, maybe we should. I don't know. Maybe we should. And you don't have to have somebody else's voice leading you. And in fact, you can also combine different ones in the same sitting session. You could sit down and just settle yourself and be with your breathing, and maybe then work a little bit with some of these kind of ideas and visualizations, a little bit of words, and then release it again or something like that. That's fine. There's no one way, no one right way. Well, I hope you found that helpful. And then after that, the text, after making this exuberant expression about how all beings should be happy, including us, we should all be joyous and safe and everyone without exception. So the unconditional part of this is really a deep part of it. And I think it's somehow easy for us to not fully take in because our minds are so conditioned, and so our perceptions are also conditioned. And it's so easy for us to say, oh yeah, I love everyone except, right? Which actually doesn't make any sense. Yeah, not those people, but everyone else, absolutely. So, and of course, as Jason was reporting, and I mentioned that little story from the Dalai Lama, so easy to exclude ourself from the everyone, from the all beings. And then the text elaborates a little more. Let's look at this part on the bottom of page 13. I think this is also kind of brilliant. And I think it is nice from time to time to slow down and read these and think about them, because even if you've been around for decades and you've chanted it 1,000 times, it just kind of rolls right by when we chant it. So now it's talking about, the first part was about the attitudes you cultivate to experience this and to live into it. And now we're talking about what your life might look like, what your behavior is like, what your life might, and the feeling of your life might be if you really took this in. Let no one deceive another, nor despise any being in any state. So this isn't just like it's not saying like knock it out, don't be deceptive or disparaging anymore. It's saying that just, why would that occur to you? Why would that even arise? It wouldn't anymore. No longer will you be deceiving or despiteful. Spiteful, I guess would be the word in English. And anger and hatred and harm for others, why would that even arise, No, you'd be much more like this. You'd be like a mother with her only child, or her only two children, as the case may be, or however many you have or don't have, who watches over and protects her only child at the risk of her life, meaning, giving away everything, willing to give away everything, letting this matter more than anything in the universe, loving all beings, letting that matter more than anything in the universe. And what that leads to is a mind without boundaries, a boundless mind, wide open. And then in the next page it describes what our world might look like. This is a great, beautiful vision. May it be so. A world suffused with love everywhere. And Buddhism and other religious texts like to kind of like, I really mean it. So the repetition is on purpose to kind of convince us and help to wear down our conditioned views. All beings, above beings, below beings, all directions, without limit, everybody, leave no one out. Infinite goodwill, not just like a lot of goodwill, infinite goodwill toward the whole world, not just our friends. And that we do this not just when we're like in the mood for it, is the next part, right? How this looks in us as embodied beings, where it says standing or walking, sitting or lying down, during all one's waking hours, let one practice the way with gratitude, this way of being. So from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, and it's not so easy, we get caught in stuff. I had something recently where I felt like I didn't handle it very well, and I was so hard on myself, really down about it. I couldn't really access this very well. But I thought about it, I did think about it a little bit, like, oh, may I be happy, No, I'm not happy. Yeah. We had a couple new visitors today I got to talk with, and I was thinking about the kind of people who come here, and I want to check this out and see if this is true, because I made a claim on our behalf. I said, the Zen community is mostly full of recovering perfectionists. Is that true? Oh, okay, good. Oh, yeah, type A, recovering type A, recovering perfectionists. Yeah, yeah, along with the people who are traumatized by other religions and all kinds of other groups. But yeah, anyway. So these practices, yeah, to apply these practices to those inner voices too, right? And yeah, it's not always not so easy, you know. When you're caught, you're caught. But the vision here is exactly as it says, yeah, all the time, every moment of your life. And then the very last paragraph is a little bit modified by the people who translated this for the Zen tradition, but it's perfectly great and valid. That a natural outcome of all this is not holding to fixed views. That you will be flexible, humble, and open-minded. And that kind of fits. Like, yeah, if you were really rigid in your views of this, that, or the other, it seems inevitable that that would really get in the way of this kind of open-minded, open-ended, inclusive love, right? Because fixed views are separations, right? Are walls between things. Yes and no, right and wrong. Because, and we may have very elaborate reasons that we've developed and could write a 1,000-page book on, but it's still a fixed view, you know. And this leads to insight. So insight here means something like wise intuition, understanding, clarity. Not tripped up on ourselves so much, endowed with insight. Freed from sense appetites is interesting. And I talked about this last week, and I don't want to digress too much, but early Buddhism had a sort of maybe a little bit locked down sounding language around the senses. That the senses are a source of danger in early Buddhist teachings, the way to describe it. But we can think about addiction, I think, and make sense of that, you know, freed from addictions, maybe, instead of sense, so appetites, right, kind of like addictions. But I think it would be a mistake to think that the Buddhists are saying never enjoy your senses, you know. No more sunsets for you. You're a Buddhist now. Look down. Right? No. But to do it from this felt sense of loving kindness and wisdom. And then you can feel, like you feel the suffering along with the unhealthy kind of sense appetites, right? You can really feel the suffering of that before, after, and during. And then the very last line is very interesting and has been translated many different ways. One who achieves the way will be freed from the duality of birth and death. So the duality of birth and death is kind of like a Zen-y thing to talk about. That birth and death, joy and sorrow, all the opposites we think of, that they seem so different. You and me, we seem so different and so separate. But maybe not, you know. Maybe joy and sorrow are much more interconnected. Me and you, much more interpenetrated. Birth and death, same thing. But the original language is actually referencing the Indian cosmology of rebirth. And the way that was talked about, that Buddha was, you know, Buddha grew up in, and so Buddha, you know, saw it this way too, presumably. That the conditioned life is full of suffering, you know. And then you're born again, and you got to do it all over again. And this is a drag, you know. And so freedom, real freedom, is you're no longer born into the conditioned world. So the original says something more like freed from rebirth, you know. You won't get born again. And to us, I think that doesn't sound like a good thing, but in that context, that's a very, very good thing. Like, I kind of want to be born again. I want another run at this, don't you? I mean, I did okay this time, but, you know, next time, do better. Be more helpful, be kinder, be less messed up. So anyway, just to know there's a tweak there to suit our Zen sensibilities. So, I was doing pretty good on getting done on time, but then I drifted. Sorry.